Despite reports from Mark Bowman about Shohei Ohtani, the Braves, we don't really know their interest, that there's probably not as much as being led on, and that the interest in Dylan Cease is also a bit overblown. Bowman kind of hedged his bets and said, but he does think that something big is going to happen. Mark Feinstein, also from MLB.com, said that he has a source that says, quote, the Braves have at least one more big move in them. And it seems like just from the way this offseason, they've been the busiest team this offseason. They've been wheeling and dealing. They've been making significant moves. They've been re-signing some of their own players. They've been as active, the Braves, I've seen them in an offseason in quite some time that I can remember. I still expect them to make one big move. So I'm going to ask you, Alex, straight up, since I don't think really any of these MLB insiders know anything more than me or you or anything, what is the move that the Braves are going to make before the start of this season? You don't have to tell me when it's going to happen. It could be a month from now. It could be 2 months from now. It could be tomorrow. But what is the move that you see the Braves making this offseason to complete this roster?
Yeah, I think the Kelenic trade indicates that the Braves aren't done. They wouldn't take on all that salary for no reason. I feel like they're going to shed that salary, and that's the only salary they're going to shed, by the way. I do not see them shedding Marcell Ozuna or Raciel Iglesias, as some have mentioned. I do anticipate they will shed other salaries, though. I'm going to go Erod. He's one of the top available starting pitchers. It seems like the Braves are trying to go in that direction as far as starting pitchers. He's reliable. He seems he's open to going anywhere. I know at the trade deadline, he didn't want to go to the Dodgers for geographical reasons, family and everything. It seems like he's more open now to going somewhere. He's reliable. He would solidify the Braves rotation for years to come. He could slot in perfectly behind Max Fried and Spencer Strider, giving the Braves easily the best top three in baseball. And there's no feeling towards that. I haven't seen any. I don't think the Braves have been linked to him at all. There was links at the last trade deadline, and that's about it. And that's just a wild guess, because like you said, like we said in the past segments, in terms of likelihood, probability, Cease is not probable. Shohei Ohtani is not probable. Yamamoto is definitely not probable, as negotiations are getting close to $300 million. So I think, that you could cross that name off the Braves wish list for sure. And then those next tier down in the starters is Jordan Montgomery and Erod. So, I'm going to go with Erod because of that interest at last trade deadline. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Jordan Montgomery is going to get overpaid this offseason. I think there's a reason why you haven't heard them connected to the Braves. But then again, a lot of the times you don't hear any connections, and that's who they go after, and that's who they target. I think he's a candidate to get overpaid. I don't see Yamamoto. I don't see Blake Snell. I don't see Marcus Stroman. Dylan Cease. I do, like I said, I think there's a chance that they do land Dylan Cease, and that would still be my top priority if I were Alex Anthopoulos. But I understand if the bidding gets too high and you just can't pull the trigger on that deal and someone else swoops him with an offer that you really can't match. That's a very high probability. I obviously am not going to sit here and pump up Braves fans and say Shohei Ohtani is going to join the Braves. Don't listen to Mark Bowman. No, I've always said that's a long shot, but we're going to talk about it. He's the biggest MLB free agent in history. If there's any links to it, we are going to sit here and discuss it like it's a possibility, and whether it's 2% or 98%. I'm going to stick with, I actually did an MLB offseason predictions before the start of the offseason, before any moves were made. And so far, it looks pretty good. I had them getting Adam Duvall, but of course, you get Kelenic. That's the kind. I mean, I think that's a better move. Obviously, you get younger in the outfield. I think he can offer similar things that Duvall can, and you get him under team control for 2028. So I think that. I think left field is fine. I believe Anthopoulos when he says they're going to try the Grissom and Kelenic thing, and maybe they do trade Vaughn Grissom if something like Dylan Cease comes to fruition. But there was a guy that I named in that piece, and this was not a very sexy piece. I didn't say we're going to go out there and get stars. I am surprised with how active the Braves have been. I said Seth Lugo was going to be the starter they signed. He's most recently been linked to the Braves from John Heyman. I'll stick with that prediction. I think he has a lot of stability to the rotation. I think getting a frontline starter is a lot harder than people want to imagine. Alex Anthopoulos has been trying to get a frontline arm, whether it be free agency or trade, for 4 or 5 years, and it hasn't happened. I think he's going to have to settle again with Seth Lugo. I do think they'll move the contracts of Gonzalez and White in some form or fashion, whether they have to attach prospects, kind of like the Mariners did when they traded Kelenic to the Braves. And my other prediction, I think, was in that thing. I don't know if I named Ronaldo Lopez by name. It might have been Jordan Hicks or someone, but it was getting a guy with high velocity in the bullpen. They did that with Ronaldo Lopez. I think the last thing that they have to do right now is get a starting pitcher. Obviously, would love for it to be Dylan Cease or Blake Snell or Yamamoto. That would be way better. There's no doubt about it. Will that happen? I don't think so. So I'm going to stick to my guns and go with a guy like Seth Lugo, who I think could give you similar production to a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez at a fraction of the price. I mean, you're talking. I think when you look at their next 2 years, if Seth Lugo had better numbers than Rodriguez, I don't think anybody would be surprised. His career numbers are better than Rodriguez. He just hasn't been utilized as a starter throughout his entire career when he was with the Mets and was a reliever. I think you get a guy like that at a fraction of the price as a guy like Erod or Jordan Montgomery or something like that. I think that's a better move. I think that's kind of a more of a Braves move. And so I'm going to stick with that prediction.
Yeah, that's that last part right there. That it's more of a Braves move, I think, is a good reason for that. And I agree. Seth Lugo, longtime high leverage reliever for the Mets. I'm sure Braves fans are familiar with him. Goes to the Padres, gets stretched out, given an opportunity as a starter, and impresses. And I think that the situations aren't dissimilar with Ronaldo Lopez, that, maybe the Braves feel like he can make a similar transition as Seth Lugo from the pen to the rotation. We know, Anthopoulos has come out and said that they're going to stretch him out and give him a chance to be a part of the rotation. And Seth Lugo is a similar kind of guy. So I definitely see, the possibility there. And if you don't have, if one of those guys don't potentially capture a spot in the rotation, you still, at worst, again, two high leverage relievers that are going to pay dividends in October, might not so much in the regular season. We know that Seth Lugo, though, is going to be a starter regardless of what team picks him up. So that does make a lot more sense, especially if you're thinking, what would the Braves do? I tend to agree with you that Seth Lugo is much more likely than E-Rob.
I also want to say that I don't think that's a bad offseason by the Braves. If that was the final move, you get Lugo, you get Ronaldo Lopez, you re-sign the guys like Morton and Pierce Johnson and Joe Jimenez. Your bullpen's a lot better. Your rotation's a lot better. You have a little wild card in Ronaldo Lopez. Maybe he can be a starter. You hang on to AJ Smith-Shawver and Hurston Waldrop and see what they can do. You get a young guy in Kelenic with some upside for basically nothing. I know Braves fans don't want to hear it because you've heard the Ohtani rumors, you've heard the Dylan Cease rumors, you've heard all these rumors about big names and obviously the contract offer to Aaron Nola. But, you don't really put yourself in a bad situation moving forward. I think that's a big thing. You give yourself a really good chance of winning next year. And then next offseason, you reevaluate things. Hopefully you're coming off a World Series and we're celebrating. But you reevaluate things, and then you look at the next year's free agent class and trade candidates and stuff like that. And you can even reevaluate sooner than that at the trade deadline. Maybe Dylan Cease doesn't get traded and he's available at the trade deadline or something like that. I don't think that would be a bad offseason for the Braves by any means. I think they would have addressed a lot of their needs. Their starting pitching staff would be a lot better. And I think their lineup could even be better with Kelenic in left field replacing Rosario. So I know it's not sexy, but I think they checked all the boxes this offseason as long as they can get someone in that starting rotation to pair with the other guys.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with offseason acquisitions. And I said this last year when Braves fans were kind of like, even though we acquired a Gold Glove all-star caliber catcher in Sean Murphy, Braves fans were kind of still, sulking that we didn't make the big move that they had wanted. And you got to look at it this way too, that internal improvement is still possible, especially with how young of a core the Braves have. Ronald Acuna Jr. just showed you last year that his health was worth any free agent on the market times 2. And the same could be said for Michael Harris with a full season of health, with another season of experience. He could obviously, I'm not going to say he's going to experience an MVP caliber jump, but he is such a young model of clay that he's going to mold into an MVP caliber player one day. He has all the tools. So internal improvement is just as important as external improvement.
Yeah, and obviously Kelenic has going to have a great opportunity to be a lot better player than he was with the Mariners, with the Braves. So I wouldn't think that's a bad offseason by any means for the Braves. Coming up after the break, we're going to get into the actual college football playoff, the matchups in the semifinals, who's going to meet in the championship.